Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It was a light content week for me, even though I do have verses, a raid video, and actually I'm starting to upload a little bit more like Party Finder related shorts or like tips for the game related shorts. Those are nice, and I might do like a longer format version of that as well. But I was actually in New York City. I was attending a Metaphor preview event. Metaphor is the new fantasy RPG from Atlas. I can't talk about it yet, but I am going to be uploading a video on this channel, not the second channel that I haven't uploaded to in a while because I've been focused on Final Fantasy 14 stuff, just because this channel has more reach. So it just makes more sense to post here than it does to post over on that one. But I had a great time. I got to see a lot of friends, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that. So please look forward to it. But this week, I'll probably have a little bit more on the docket. No more solo stuff. That's completely done. I want to do a few more shorts, and I have the physical ranged verses in the works. I'm also working on a how to identify like raid mechanics for progression rating style video. Basically stating things like, you know, oh, if this targets two people and it kills them both, look at who it targeted, how much damage it did it give a vuln stat, you know, like basically the things that allow really hardcore raiders or really experienced players to see a mechanic maybe once, maybe twice, and then figure out what is actually happening. Because I get that question a lot where people are like, how can you even tell that that does that? How do you even solve that? Like, what are the things? And I figure that while people like to learn the fights, they like to know how to do the fights, learning how to identify mechanics makes you stronger at recovery and makes you stronger in progression rating scenarios. If you want to get into hardcore week one stuff, it just makes you a better player overall. Just helps you understand how the game works a whole lot more. So those are a couple of things. I'm also working on a 1 to 100 leveling guide, something that encapsulates all of my previous videos that I've done on it and puts them together into one. So yeah, we've actually got quite a few things on the docket, and I'm really looking forward to it, on top of more Party Finder related shorts and stuff like that. So yeah, we got some fun stuff. But anyway, let's get on to the Q&A. This will be traditional format this week because there aren't that many questions. If I did a lightning round, this video would be like 15 minutes long, because I would just zoom through all the answers and whatnot. So we're going to do traditional format this week. One last thing, thanks to the sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. Nobody has to support. Anyone who does support the channel is choosing to do so of their own volition, because, you know, I produce all my content for free. I don't like gating things behind memberships or like an official like Patreon, hey, do this to get this exclusive content. I like to let everyone have everything. So support's always optional. And hey, just being here, liking the video, asking a question for next week in the comment section, all of that supports the channel as well. Anyway, let's get into the Q&A. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hola. Hello. How are you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. How are the cats? One of them's using a litter box right this second. Quick question. Now that we're in post-Dawn Trail, I've started wondering if we go back to the 7.1 to 7.3 leading into the true finale like Heavens were to Shadowbringers, who would the end boss be? So I'm obviously not going to be talking much about spoilers in this one. I'm still not doing that. Let me just say this. If you saw the cutscenes at the very end and were paying attention to the lore, especially in the second half of Dawn Trail's story, you have a very solid potential theory, at least about what a 7.3 finale style would look like, or at least what the main threat would be of it. I'm still not really divulging into the spoiler territory for that for the sake of the Q&A, but there we do have an idea of who it might be, and I think we will see that for Dawn Trail. So I'm looking forward to seeing if I'm right, but don't get me wrong. I'm not like, oh, it absolutely has to be. They've just presented it in such a way where I can see what the route is to get to that. It wasn't as closed book ending as one might think it was, as long as you were paying close enough attention. Hi, hello, Mr. Happy. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Thanks for answering my question a few weeks back. I love that you still do these videos. Yeah, it's always nice doing the Q&As, even if sometimes I'm a little snarky. I have another materia melding question, but different than last time. I don't remember what the last one was because my brain wipes itself every however often. Oh, I just saw something in my recommended list that makes me laugh. But anyway, me and my friend are getting into an argument about how much materia it takes to pentameld gear sets, and he's just being ridiculous, saying he can spend 1 to 2 mil on materia and pentameld the whole set. Someone who has shattered dozens and dozens of materia that I get from spirit bonding, I don't believe him at all. I remember you and Sly saying on one of your streams for Savage how much material you needed to pentameld everything, but can't remember or find where you said it. How much on average does it realistically take to pentameld a set? If you buy most of your materia, how much you usually end up spending? So I haven't bought materia in like 7 years, 7 or 8 years. I've been doing the hunts. I literally just don't have to buy them. However, I think the going average is 200 or 300 grade like max grade materia, so the stuff you will guaranteed meld plus do a single over meld for. And then you usually, I think it's 500 to 600 grade, in this case would be grade 11s, the grade under that you usually get the really low percentages on the pentamelds for. So yeah, you're looking at anywhere from 700 to 900 materia across the both of them. And it's tough because every different server has their own economy for that. But I spend 0. So I don't know how to give you a price. I don't even know what they were priced at the day of. But my real advice is you shouldn't be buying materia anyway. Go do the hunt. There's hunts everywhere. Even if you just do one hunt train on your own server a day, that's all I did. And I had like hundreds left over. I think I had 400 clusters, and I had like 50 to 60 of each kind just from buying them with nuts. And that was, I'm sorry, that's for grade 12s. And then I probably had about the same for grade 11s. I think I had closer to 500 for grade 11s for the tokens. And I want to say like 100 of each in my inventory. And I didn't even come close to using all of them. I pentamelded multiple sets and never came close to running out of materia. So I was definitely on the better swing, except for when I lost 76, I think it was, materia in a single overmeld attempt. That was pretty bad. But yeah, that's, at least you can extrapolate those numbers and come up with like an actual gill answer, at least relative to the server you're playing on. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Hope you have a great week. You too. Black Myth Wukong comes out this week. Visions of Mana is soon. Ooh, I'm excited. How would you feel about an ultimate set around the Crystal Tower raid series? Queen, Scylla, Amon, Cerberus, Zonde, or Phlegathon? Wait, how are you going to do a Crystal Tower raid series without Cloud of Darkness? Like, Cloud of Darkness is the last boss. Like, Zonde leading into Cloud of Darkness. Like, yeah, you could include Amon, Cerberus. You probably do include some of the heavy hitters potentially. Realistically, I think Amon, for, you know, Amon, and probably Phlegathon, like maybe include the behemoths somewhere in there. But honestly, it's not so much that I don't think it's a good idea. It's more so that what they would need to do to ultimate-ify it is like, I like a lot, because they're balanced around being alliance raids, so there's not really a whole lot that happens in any of them. And obviously even less happens nowadays. You know, there's a little bit more interesting back in the day, looking at you some of the Circus Tower bosses that we skip literally everything on now. But, and honestly, then the other question is it 8 or 24? And I honestly think you just make it 8. I don't think you do an ultimate 24-man. We don't even have Savage 24-man for, like, the classic ones. You wouldn't jump all the way up to ultimate for that one. So, if it's 8, then they have to, like, rebalance. Yeah, I mean, realistically, it ends with Cloud of Darkness. Like, that's the big thing. Like, some sort of, like, super new form Cloud of Darkness. Or, like, maybe Amon, like, survives when you fight him in the Crystal Tower and, like, takes on Cloud of Darkness and, like, tries to use that to end all life instead. Like, I don't know. Like, you gotta really embellish it, like, a lot more, so much so that it's kind of weak of an idea. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Nice and simple. Hola, Senor Haps. Hola. 2 questions for you if you don't mind. I don't mind at all. We don't actually have that many comments this week. One, I've been toying with streaming on Twitch myself. Wanted to ask if you had an open source OBS you would recommend, not investing money. OBS is by definition open source. Don't use Streamlabs OBS unless you're running a 2-PC setup. And if you're just starting to stream, there's no reason you should have a 2-PC setup. Heck, I don't have a 2-PC setup. I don't really find the need for it. Yeah, just OBS. That's it. What made you decide on physical range for raiding? I wanted to play Monk in 2.0. I had leftover Bard gear from 1.0. I played Bard. I never got to leave it. I then went to Ninja because the group I was joining had a Bard already. And then I left Ninja. And then I played Monk. And then I played Machinist. And then I played Monk. And then I got stuck on Dancer and Bard for the last, like, 2 and some odd expansions. So the choice was more so made for me. I like to go Monk instead when I can. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hi. Do you think the perception that the current Savage raid tier is too easy has more to do with raiders getting better over time, or that mechanics are actually easier? It's both. It's definitely both. So we're in a post-DSR, post-top first raid tier. It was always going to feel easier. Like, even just looking back at previous raid tiers, like, if you released Titan as is now, it would be super easy. Like, we would be so over-prepared for it. And other than the problems it had with the slow and fast instance, I think it realistically would have died in, I think, an hour or 2 longer than what we experienced here, which was just under 9 hours, I believe, for this tier. That being said, especially in M4S itself, there's the second half is lacking. There's really just one mechanic that was getting people and causing them to hard stall on Prog. But it was never the DPS check. It was never really any other second phase mechanic. Like once you got to under 60%, you were almost always guaranteed with a little bit of practice to get to the 10% mark after that. It was just that simple of a phase. So I do genuinely think it's both. Like there's definitely places where they could have added stacks and spreads or made the mechanics faster or made the boss do more. Like for example, Mustard Bomb should be like, I don't know, it should be like it targets 4 people with explosions and 2 people with tethers. And then the 2, I don't know, it should be something like really strange where it's like Mustard Bomb hits 4 people with the spread marker. Then 4 people have to grab tethers and block for those 4 people. And then Mustard Bomb casts again, but the other 4 people have to step forward and take tethers while the other 4 players explode behind them. And they're like conal AoEs that need to be blocked. Like that would be something that would make more sense for a final fight. It's not really that much more difficult. It's a little bit more strenuous on damage. It takes the tank equation out of it a little bit, so you might want to change it up slightly. Maybe make 2 of the tethers like tank tethers, or like 1 of the 4 tethers tank tethers, so the tank has to flex around and then you need to move. But yeah, then for a first tier, that starts to get too much. And then you have the swords, which are super slow. Those swords definitely should have like light party, like either a random light party spread every time the swords jump, or like a pairs mechanic or something related to like a cast bar, or like the type of animation that gets done to the chain. Like there should be, instead of marking one of them as completely unmarked, it should mark one of them with like a different color chain lightning tether. And then that color tells you if it's stack or pairs for that side. Like that would be something that would be more Savage-esque. And it's missing things like that. It just is. So I think it is absolutely both. But I do think that it's mostly, outside of the second half of M4S, on par with what we should have expected. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. What, if anything, should we expect from the 14 mobile MMO? Nothing, because it's never releasing outside of China. Yeah, for those who don't know, at the Chinese Fan Festival, they confirmed that they were developing a mobile version of Final Fantasy XIV for MMOs. That is Chinese exclusive. And it makes sense. There's a lot of like mobile experiences that thrive in China. I always say the only reason PUBG is even still around is because it really has dominated the mobile market in China. But that's it. It's never going to mean anything to anyone else. Also, with how Dawn Trail DPS numbers are right now, should we expect perhaps another level squish? Honestly, they should have level squished us more when they did it the first. I'm sorry. They should have stat squished us more the last time they did it. I'm expecting a level squish after 100, in all honesty. So I'm going to say that that's when they would do the next, like, kind of stat squish of some kind. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hello. Hope you're doing great. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. How would be a good way to distribute and schedule the Savage Loot in a static? Obviously DPS first, but how can you make it as fair as possible? So this depends on what your strategy is. Some groups really like to funnel 1 DPS and then run a comp that boosts their it takes advantage of their big gear, and then a big buffing comp that makes them do tons of damage. That comes with a lot of risk. If that one person screws up, in some cases, not this tier to be honest, but in some cases, that actually costs you, because that one person making a mistake means an instant wipe. Just like you just give up. Like maybe you can keep going to practice mechanics, but realistically, you probably just give up. What we did, and what I think is a healthier way of doing it, yes, DPS should have priority. If you're in a static that is confident you will be clearing the entire tier, and you want to clear it as quickly as possible. If you're not planning on clearing week 1, that doesn't matter. It literally, the gear should just be, people can roll on their best, doesn't matter. But if you're looking for that week 1 and looking to make the most of the gear, then it should be melee DPS or not even melee DPS, highest damage job prio for BIS. And then if it's not BIS, give it to the people who would otherwise use BIS. For example, I got my legs week 1 because nobody else in my group needed legs for their BIS. So even though theoretically they would gain a higher percentage gain off of taking the legs, we were confident enough that having our damage and our gear spread out was healthier for our overall DPS than to funnel it all into one person and have to make sure they made 0 mistakes while pumping them up. You can, either way works, but I think as fair as possible is to do that. And then you have another decision. Statics go back and forth on this, but if you're not sure, if you want to be fairer to the tanks and healers, you do one of two things. You either give them a lot of loot the subsequent week to make up for the fact that you probably, you gave a weapon to the DPS and you've like funneled loot into the DPS role, or week 1 DPS aren't allowed to roll on the mount. That's another thing that's commonly practiced. We didn't do that either. We didn't care. We knew we were going to stay together to get BIS at the very minimum. We were going to stay together to get BIS. So there's a few different ways, but I think the way we did it is kind of like the overall fairest. And then like if no DPS, like let's say no DPS needed gloves, we would give that to like a tank instead. Because why not, right? The tank's going to need it. Tank, whatever. Like if it's a gunbreaker or something, I don't know if gunbreaker needs gloves or not, but it's just an example. They could get a lot more out of it, and then it would be something that would help us with our loot tables for the following weeks. So that's a healthy-ish way of doing it. Oh, and on that previous question, Loot Master. Just Loot Master, have the loot decided in advance of who gets what. Like, look at the gear lists, hand them out, be like, okay, I'm Loot Master, I'm giving this, and tell nobody to leave the instance, even if they're not getting loot. Don't leave the instance till loot is distributed, because if they try to leave the instance while you as a Loot Master are distributing loot, it resets the list and gets really annoying, because then they have to constantly reopen the list to try to give the thing for each person that leaves while they're trying to do it, and you don't want that. So anyway, question in front of us, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Longest time. No ask. I bet I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I joined back in 6.1, so I never experienced a proper expansion launch, and it's been a blast. Omni 100, working on EX's maps, good times. Since 0.1 will be around November, are we getting any more news before then? Yes, we should have 3, if they're following pattern, live letters prior. In fact, I'm expecting a live letter announcement this week for some time in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We should have a post-Dawn Trail release live letter where we get the roadmap of Dawn Trail's release. So like what kind of content will be in 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.55. All of that should be giving us a general outline. Then we should have 7.1 part 1 and 7.1 part 2 live letters. Now, there's no guarantee they separate the roadmap one and the 0.1 part 1 preview. So we might get those combined, and then thus it would only be 2 live letters. The other thing is the timing. Bare minimum, we expect 1 towards the middle to end of September, which I guess that's TGS timing, so that would make sense. And then we should expect 1, I think it's 10 days prior, 9 or 10 days prior to the actual patch. So that would be, if November 12th ends up being the day, it would be beginning of November, essentially. So expect about that format and about those timeframes. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy. Hi. I just want to ask about the weekly gear restrictions for normal and savage raids. New players coming in from other MMOs are raiding current for the first time complain about why they can't gear more jobs for a game that boasts that you're able to play all jobs, or how the game restricts them from helping their friends because of the weekly lockout and penalties. Do you have any explanations why this hasn't been changed, or is Yoshi P aware of this? Seem to remember that being a problem since the beginning for hardcore raiders. So, number 1 reason, they want you to pay your monthly sub. If you need to log in weekly to get loot, you're likely paying your sub to do so. That's the crux of all monthly subscription MMOs. People talk about free-to-play MMOs having a lot of cash up stuff. A monthly subscription MMO has a lot of gated stuff. That is the number 1 reason. Number 2 is they don't want you... so the reason for the loot penalty is the other part of the question, is because they don't want people abusing the loot penalty to essentially carry people. So like, let's say they got rid of the loot penalty and you ran 7 people that have cleared and 1 person that hasn't, and then they just get everything. You see the problem, right? Especially when it comes to sales. Now, what I think they should compromise is change the criteria for 0 and 1 chest. Now, I know it's only 1 chest, but we still refer to getting all of the loot as a 2 chest. I think they should change it to, if you have between 3 and 6 players who have not cleared, so you could have anywhere from 2 to... No, this is right. Wait, how do I want to word this? I know what I want to say. So, if you have anywhere from... I know what I want to say. If you have 1 or 2 players that have already cleared for the week in the group, you still get full loot. If you have 3 to 6 players that have already cleared for the week, you get 1 piece of loot. And if you have 7 or 8 players that have cleared, you get 0 pieces of loot. Now, you could take it maybe a step back and do like 1 or 2 is all loot, 3 to 5 is, I think that's probably better. 3 to 5 is 1 chest, and then 6 to 8 is 0 chest. I think they should make that concession so that I, as one person, can still go with my friends, help them and not hurt them, but you can't then abuse the system to help funnel loot and do sales and stuff like that. That's the compromise I want them to make, because I don't think they'll ever remove it altogether. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Well met, Mr. Happy. Hello. Are there any other MMOs you play besides 14? Are you looking forward to any future MMOs? What are your favorite MMOs other than 14? I played WoW for a few years. Obviously, I've dabbled in Final Fantasy 11. I played WildStar when it came out. I played, what's it called? Not Ion. What's it called? Rift. I played Rift when it came out. Love Chloromancer. I've played like a bunch of free-to-plays. I played Silk Road Online. I played Fliff. I played, what was it? I played Ragnarok Online 2. I played Maple Story 2. I played Blade and Soul for like half a year. I tried Black Desert for like an hour. Hated that game. ESO I played for a small bit. Even did some sponsored content. Guild Wars 2 I played quite a bit when it first came out, and then revisited it sometime later on. But that's right. I revisited it during Heart of Thorns. That was a lot of fun, actually. Although Heart of Thorns, well, it was a lot of fun at first, but Heart of Thorns are a little rough around the edges. And then there are like like some people would consider things like Warframe. It's not really an MMO, but like some people kind of throw that in there. Destiny 2 gets kind of thrown in there. I don't really feel like those are MMOs. You know what I'm saying? They're online and they're multiplayer. They're MOs. There you go. MOs. But on my radar right now, Pantheon has an alpha in December, I believe. And I backed Pantheon ages ago, so I'm curious to try that out. Ashes of Creation, I think, is fucking dead in the water. I have no faith in that game. I know people who work at that company, and they know I feel that way, and I feel bad because I don't want them to like not have a job, but I can't in any way have any more confidence in that game because I have no confidence in that game at all. I think it's going to crash and burn super hard, or it's never going to release. Like it's going to be another Star Citizen situation. Yeah, I don't have much faith in MMOs nowadays. And WoW, I don't even want to go near, like, ever again. Like, it's just, I played it before, I see it now, and I'm just like, I'm frustrated even thinking about it. So I just don't even want to do it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. First time asker. Welcome. In relation to changes for Fizz range, although adding more damage is a good thing, what do you think about other kinds of utility to solidify them as support DPS, such as letting Peloton have an in-combat use? We have too much support in this game across all the roles already. You only do that if you're taking something away from something else. Quite frankly, we have too much MIT, we have too many shields, we have too much regen, we have too many support tools in this game. That's one of the reasons why the whole healer thing even happened in the first place. It's why M4S and top can be done without an actual healer. So it's because they've given us so many tools across the jobs so that we feel like every job is valuable at bringing something, which is a good idea in theory, but it's too much. We need the roles that want damage, just give them damage. Don't give them even more support unless you are planning on weaning it away from other roles. In which case, sure, I would say yes to that. Hi. Hashtag Mr. Happy. I was wondering what you think they could do with minions in 14. Lords of Verminion is a very dead game, but I really want to use my minions in other ways than vanity items. I was thinking maybe do it like in WoW, where it's kind of like Pokemon battles with typing and 4 abilities are set by the player, but I want to see your input. I mean, if they did anything, like, honestly, that's what I want for Beastmaster. I don't want that for minions. We don't need to create alternate uses for cosmetic items, because then they're not cosmetic. Now they have value in some form of, like you've said here, like a battling mini game. Well, yes, that's not a raid necessarily. It's still creating value, and we have lots of minions that are not always available. Either you have to buy them in the cash shop, or you have to buy like a CD or an art book, and now they have value inside of this thing. Now, you could argue, yes, they have value inside of Lord of Verminion 2, but that game is balanced in such a way that it's not that big of a deal, and nobody cares about Lords of Verminion in the first place. So it kind of just falls in the it's okay because it's irrelevant kind of situation. But if they create a brand new feature that now makes incredible use out of those things, you have to consider what you're doing with them. Do they deliberately make them bad because you have to pay money for them and they don't want it to seem like it's pay to win? Or do they make them good because people are paying money? Do they make them neutral? And how do they make them neutral? Are they just like not that impressive? Do they kind of just stand alongside the other ones? In which case, do people think they're less valuable as me? It adds a whole dynamic to the game that I honestly don't think is worth it. You know what I mean? They're cosmetic minions. They're an expression of you as a player, and I think that's fine. Additional question, but what do you think of the future of jobs will look like? Altering job roles? Like, no. You're never going to see... I rarely say you'll never see something because I'm not a developer. I'm likely to be wrong about almost any time I say never, and I accept that. I expect that I could have pie on my face at a later date. You know, you accept that when you present an opinion on the internet or a thought or whatever. That's fine. They're never doing that. They're never doing alternate roles like that. They're just going to keep designing more jobs. I don't think they'll do job advancements either. I don't think there's a point in doing job advancements, especially when you have so many jobs. Like, do you just advance a few and then everyone else feels left out? Do you make a new job and that job advances and only the new job does? It's better to just come up with either shrink the levels and keep doing what you've been doing, because honestly, it's fine. Or you create a system that disguises the current like leveling process for the next 10 levels. Like, for example, we're level 100. Let's say they added merit system. I'm not talking about Final Fantasy 11s. I'm just borrowing the name, where instead of gaining levels from 100 to 110, you fill a gauge as you kill monsters and do dungeons, and that gives you a point. And that point is then spent on a limited list of bonuses for your job. By the time you're level 110 equivalent of it, you would have all those bonuses. So you're essentially just choosing the things that you want earlier in the leveling process. Maybe one of them's like a new AoE, so you can use it in dungeons, for example. But by the time you finish the MSQ, which would be the equivalent to finishing the level process, you have all of them, so it effectively becomes the same thing as having gained 10 levels. Like, that's something I could see them doing. But, and honestly, not a half bad idea now that I've said it out loud. But it wouldn't be customization in like my character is different than your character. Just we maybe made a different decision at level like 92, or I'm sorry, at level 102 equivalent. And now I have better AoE and you have something that's better against bosses. You know, like that's it. But no, I don't think you'll ever see anything fancy schmancy. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. So my wonderful luck has placed me with the gold cert from Chloe. Very lucky. Feel like it's a little late in the raid tier to drop it on an ornate. Yes, I would not do that now. You saw him for 40 mil. I've never seen a gold cert for 40 mil ever. It's 20 to 25 mil is like the going rate. And yes, hold on to it for the next tier. Find a buyer in advance and then be up on expansion launch. If you are going to sell it on expansion launch, you really want to set up a buyer and be up at like 3 a.m. when this, I guess technically the next tier, you'd want to be up around 1 a.m. instead. Actually, no, the next tier, it wouldn't matter because we'd have, yeah, you wouldn't even need to worry about that. Actually, for the next two tiers, you don't need to worry about being on server up because would likely Savage will be delayed a week, but we'll have the crafted gear the week before, as that's what they did in Endwalker for 0.2 and 0.4. Yeah, I would save it for the next tier, set up a buyer, and you should be A-okay. Hashtag lunes con el Senor Feliz. I know what that means. Hey there, Senor Happy. Hi, hope you're doing well. I'm doing all right. I got two quick questions. Do you think in the future, it will be possible to solo the Endwalker raid? Second question, what is your main weapon in Monster Hunter? I'll do that one first. Hammer. Give me the bonk, baby. Give me the bonk. It looks a little bit better in Wilds, but mostly comfortable in the same. Solo Endwalker. I'm trying to think. So the problem is, until we see how tank defenses, shields, and everything interact, I have to consider what it looks like to do or fail a mechanic. Like, for example, in Temperance in P1, if you fail a tower, they all explode on you. So would a tank that's another expansion ahead have enough mitigation to survive multiple intemperances? And then what does the damage down end up looking like in terms of actually killing the boss on time? So that's tough. That's tough to really think about because we don't ever fully understand how one person interacts with the fight until we have more time soloing it. Like, you might get a peek of it when people are dead, but even that's not the same. Like, sometimes mechanics target dead people for the sake of consistency. So you have 8, and you can't really resolve it because people are dead. But it's different when you have 1. Like, a great example, I just did Eden Titan Savage, and when you get marked for mechanics, like if you have, let's say, like the blue marker and the orange marker over your head for like the, you know, hitting AoEs around you and hitting your spot with a stack damage marker, it stacks both of them on you. But when you look at E2, the spell in waiting just keeps overriding and you really only get hit by one effect. So like we never really fully understand how they're going to interact until it comes out. So will some of them be possible? It's maybe, but I really can't say for certain. Real quick, lightning rounding the question before this, it just asked when I think Fru will release. If it's on pattern, November 26th. So hope your North American players are thankful for their statics this Thanksgiving. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Howdy. Hi. Just curious about your thoughts on the Arcadian Savage. A bunch of AoE damage, party-wide damage is physical damage in this tier of Savage. Yeah, I noticed. It's toxic. Personally, I think Square Enix should have changed Dark and Gunbreaker's party mitigations for adding that much physical damage. Raid-wide. Someone else literally has 2 raid-wides that do magical damage, which I think makes those 2 jobs much weaker. So, okay. Here's an honest thing. People want jobs to feel less samey. The question is where that line is drawn. Because if you make all the raid mitts the same, then you're essentially adding another layer of homogenization. Whereas they have some jobs that will excel in some situations and others that won't. Now, of course, what we're doing, unfortunately, is we're comparing magical only mitigations versus all damage mitigations. So the question becomes, is the problem that they aren't physical damage mitigations and magical damage mitigations, so some excel and some don't? I think the question is where you really want to fall on that ladder. That's not a phrase. I don't know what that means. where you really want to fall on that topic. And that's going to be something that I think everyone answers a little bit differently. I think objectively in this particular case, yes, it makes sense to have all the mitts be the same so that they're all equal. But going forward, they said they want to make jobs less homogenized and give them more individual play patterns. But is the way they access their power what's going to change? Excuse me. Or is it what they definitively bring to a raid or a player, I guess a group activity in general, like Extreme Trials, Rage, whatever, it's Bosia, stuff like that. Is that how they want to define it? So this is actually a deep topic, because on the surface it looks like just why didn't they change this for Heart of Light and Dark Missionary? But it is deeper than that. And also, I'll say this. I think it's fine to have some mitts be stronger or weaker. I think it's, for example, like Dark Knight, while I don't think Oblation is particularly great, it is nice that Dark Knight essentially has 3 spot mitts between Oblation and TBN. It's a question of when that's actually useful, but when it is useful, it's really nice to be the Dark Knight. But then you have the flip side of that, where when you don't need that, Oblation is, well, Oblation, and Dark Missionary is all down to what damage type the actual AoE is. So, like, it's really a question of, are you okay with pros and cons for jobs? And are the cons of one job outweighed by the pros of it in some scenario? Like, is the gain for some scenarios worth being not as good in others? And that's tough. I don't think there's one correct answer to that, so it's tough. I saw a question I had to skip. You know why. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey there. Hi. I haven't played the game in a hot minute, but I'm looking back and wanting the Stormblood Ninetales. Are those extremes easy to solo now, or do you need some pretty good gear and a decent job? They're all really easy except Susano. Susano might be soloable soon, because Pictomancer just probably needs a little bit more gear and maybe some crit RNG in order to do it. But no, for most of them, yeah, it's really, really easy. As long as you understand the bare bone basics of those fights, you maybe need to know like when to use a tank invuln at some spots, or like how to do a specific mechanic for a specific boss. It should be, yeah, those ones, all the Stormblood ones should be pretty easy across the board. And I should reiterate, Susano with 2 people is a joke. So throwing that out there. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Morning, Haps. Hi. Given how polarizing the current raid tier is, I've heard from some groups it's as bad as... What? Wait. It's as bad as... Okay, I'm going to say this. If you ever use the analogy that this tier is almost as bad as Gordius, please shut the fuck up. I played through Gordius. I was the top 10 raider in Gordius. I was almost world 3rd for Living Liquid. which was the static destroyer. This is nothing like Gordius. I'm angered even seeing the comparison. So if you share that opinion, get out. Do you think it'll be a wake-up call for creative? Wait, CS? Is it CS3? Is it Creative Studio 3? Yeah, I guess Creative Studio 3. To finally branch out to making more unique and interesting encounters. That's not the problem. Most people agree these fights are pretty fun. They're just tuned really low. And the second half of M4S doesn't have enough mechanics. Most people really enjoy the mechanics and find these fights pretty fun. They're just tuned low, which is normal for a first tier, which is why I really only highlight the second half of M4S, where it's on the too easy side. Everything else is pretty on par. So, no. This is actually the last question because I can see the bottom comment right here. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello there. Hi. So I took 2 weeks off for the Diablo 4 hype. That's not a sentence I thought I'd hear. Is it too late for me to try and jump back into Savage? No, it's been 2 weeks. Just join. I see like fresh practice prog groups all the time. I saw like 5 of them the other day for M4S, and I was like, can I please get a re-clear group or something? Just go do it. It'll be fine. All right, and that makes for the end of this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. If you have a question for next week, throw it in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and go enjoy all my other stuff while you're at it. Anyway, I will see you in the next video, and until then, take care.